Hello, and welcome to another one of our video snapshot interviews. My name is Colleen Flynn, and I'm the co-executive director of Build Healthy Places Network. We are a national center fostering multi-sector collaboration across healthcare, public health, and community development to accelerate community-centered investments in racial equity. We are focusing our attention right now on multi-sector partnerships involving community development, healthcare, and health payers across California that are co-investing in projects that support people experiencing homelessness and folks that have situations that where they haven't had a lot of choice and opportunity in their life. And I'm excited to introduce our guests today. We have Yvonne Dar-Torsen, Vice President of Community Health and Wellbeing at St. Angus Medical Center and a part of Trinity Health. Courtney Shapiro, Director of Community Relations at Calviva Health. Artie Padilla, Drive Initiative Director at Central Valley Community Foundation. And Keith Berthold, CEO of Regenerate California Initiative, Inc., and former Executive Director of Fresno Metro Ministry. They were all a part of the St. Res and Food to Share Hub project in Fresno, California, that Build Healthy Places Network helped to support through some capacity building and technical assistance through our Healthy Neighborhood Investments, which was funded by Blue Shield of California Foundation. And they're here to tell us about the project and their story now that it's opening this May 2024. Welcome, everyone. Keith, let's start with you. Could you briefly describe your role in the project and introduce us to the Hub project and what it was aiming to achieve with the opening in May and the long-term vision? We are particularly interested in how the project supports or will support community-led or community-owned approaches. I'll let you take it away, Keith.
Thanks. Well, I'm really grateful again to be here with Yvonne Dar-Torsen and Courtney Shapiro and Artie Padilla, just really true partners on this project. I was the executive director of Fresno Metro Ministry when we launched a program called Food to Share, and we launched it with food recovery and distribution to, reduce food waste and a number of things, and then started teaching cooking classes and nutrition education, a lot of farming and urban gardening, and on and on and on. And we met a partner when we started that called St. Res Baptist Church. They were doing food distributions. And so we lucked out. There's a program called Transformative Climate Communities, very, very collaborative, focused on the 93706 zip code, which includes this area. And Artie's been a key part of this the whole time, and everybody's kind of had touched it a little bit. And a grant came up after the initial phase of that, and we had a chance to apply it to this site. The church had bought a like 80-year-old warehouse. It was an old Farmer John Meat Company warehouse on Elm Avenue, right near the campus, for like $1 in 2014. And we used it off and on for some food storage and distribution kind of things, but it was really in bad shape. So we got this grant, we got into this vision of how could we upgrade this warehouse? And to be candid, we tried to fit a new kitchen in the warehouse. It just wouldn't work. And so we had to build a bigger project. We started this about 2020, and about 2021, we had to build it as a bigger project. So we conceptualized a new 4,000 square foot building in the parking lot of this warehouse. And that's what this has become, really a 6,000 square foot warehouse and a 4,000 square foot two-story building. Courtney was in from the beginning, really, really a great contribution to the warehouse. Yvonne came a little later on the new building. We thought we were doing pretty good, but then the new building cost us a lot more. When it was all priced out in 2021, it was a $4.5 million project. With inflation and everything else, it's become a $6.3 million project. It will facilitate millions of pounds of extra food recovery and distribution. And then there'll be cooking classes and nutrition education and services on the new building, and that'll go on forever. Maybe I'll stop right there because I really like everybody else to chime in on their view of this, but it's grown from a beginning of just this food distribution recovery partnership to this really exceptional community asset.
And could you, before I turn it over, and I do want to hear from others, just a little bit about how this project is leaning towards community-led or community-driven, just a little bit more about that, Keith, and then we'll turn it over.
Well, maybe the context of Southwest, and Artie can help with this too. Southwest has been left behind for like 75 years in the growth of Fresno, and it just has a hard time. It's one of the highest concentrated poverty. higher pollution, higher chronic disease areas. And this particular area where the food hub is actually a food desert, probably in the top 5 in the country in terms of, being high poverty and those kinds of things. So the idea was we needed some assets that would start to get people feeling pride and self-worth, right? Like, here's a good investment. This is a very high quality asset that's been developed. And I think because of transformative climate communities, the work Artie's doing with civic infrastructure and the Drive Initiative, there's a whole lot of groups in West Fresno that are starting to work together finally. I think this just becomes a catalyst for more collaboration and more community development in this area.
Thanks, Keith. Artie, let's go over to you, and if you want to talk a little bit more about what Keith was talking about with community driven, that'd be great. But could you share a little bit more about your role in the project and why the project required involvement of multi-sectors, and particularly how the community development sector was involved? We'd also love to hear one tactic used to ensure the healthcare sector was involved in the process.
Yeah, so I was at the time when Keith and the St. Res team started communicating. I was actually on the board of the St. Res EDC, the nonprofit that the church has. I was also on Keith's board at Fresno Metro Ministry, and I was also on the oversight committee for TCC. So I had some connection points within everything, and I was able to, when Keith and the St. Res team submitted their project, I was able to, at those oversight committee meetings, really share a vision of what it could be, the possibilities, right? And not that it needed to be sold, but it was good to have someone inside the meetings really kind of sharing the bigger vision of what the St. Res Food Hub place could be, its placemaking component. So that was my interconnectivity early on. And Keith and I really, Fresno is a very networked city, right? So we have FCHIP, our Health Equity Initiative, C2C, our Education Initiative, Drive as an economic upward mobility initiative. We have the Children's Movement that is also working with for kids and parents. And we really leveraged, and especially FCHIP, we really leveraged our networks to get the word out about what we were doing, sharing a vision. Keith and I would bring folks one-on-one to the site, giving them a vision, having some posters out there, collectively bringing groups to the site, having meetings. All of this was embedded through networks of our CDCs, getting feedback from them, working with the school district. That's where a lot of this food was coming from. I had a great network with all the other churches that were doing food distributions in Southwest Fresno. So, we really just leveraged our existing relationships and our existing networks, right? Courtney, when she came on board, she added her network. Yvonne added her network, right? So we just kept expanding. And that had also brought in more funders, right? As the costs kept going up, we had to keep finding more funders, right? That's kind of played the multi-sector role. But it's really, honestly, you have to have those network weavers that all 4 of us really play here in Fresno and others to leverage getting the fund development aspect of it done, but also the future programmatic work too, right? So all of that is kind of interwoven. Now, because of Keith and our networks with FCHIP and Courtney and Yvonne and all the hospitals, it was actually not too challenging to connect with them. It was selling the vision to them, right? So that's where we also had one-on-ones with each of those hospitals. We brought them individually to the site. Then we collectively had a meeting, several meetings at the site where we were selling the vision and why collectively they could do something really amazing, and they have, as the health sector. So thankfully, Fresno is so well networked. In other cities, this would be a lot harder to do. But because of the relational trust that we have, Courtney, I can go to Courtney if I need to tap into someone. I know that she knows me, she trusts me, I trust her, I trust Yvonne, Yvonne trusts me. And so that is really kind of what is needed in communities for multi-sector efforts to happen.
And Artie, would you say being a part of the FCHIP, which I think stands for Fresno Community Health Implementation Plan, was that where some of the trust building happened, when you all were part of that process?
It's one of them for sure. I mean, I would say if you look at the historical context of Fresno, the last 20 years, the children's movement was really one of the first mechanisms of bringing people together. Then F-Chip, then Cradle to Career, and then Drive. So it's really built on the network of networks, we call it. So yeah.
And would you say the community development role was then helping to acquire that land and helping to think about a little bit of the vision of that property with the community? What would you say were kind of some of the key things at the community development?
Well, the St. Res has two arms. They have the church, which has been anchored there for over 80 years, right? Then they have the EDC, which is part of the Community and Economic Development Partnership. So they have the relational connectivity to the residents. They've had it for years, right? As a historical Black church in that neighborhood. So the EDC adds the component of maybe some of the other CBO and other CDCs that have a connectivity to more of the programmatic work. So the two combined, added with the networks that Keith, Yvonne, Courtney, and I brought in, is really, I'm looking at macro community, networking, not limited to the CDCs and the place-based work, but all those other partners spoke into this work as we were developing this over time.
Great. Thank you so much, Artie. So Yvonne, could you share a little bit more about how St. Agnes Medical Center's involvement in this project and the healthcare systems, some of the motivations of getting involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the work that drives our investment in community comes from our community health needs assessment. We assess the community every 3 years. I've been assessing the community for more than that, so much longer, and the same issues show up year after year, assessment after assessment. One of those being food security and neighborhood revitalization. So when Keith had this vision, and it started way before the food hub vision, he and the partners at St. Res Church had this brownfield, and he outlined for us what that was going to look like someday. There was going to be a community center, a playground, a place where we could have events. There was going to be a food hub where folks could come in and have cooking classes and start a small business potentially. And food to share could be rooted in that food hub. The vision that Keith created for that particular corner of this area was very enticing, and it met all of the needs in terms of what the community needed. It needed somebody to come in and be visionary. It needed somebody to come in, an agency or a person to come in and partner with the residents in determining what that was going to look like, very resident driven. It needed the faith-based community to be partnered in it. And it hit on all sorts of different anchors, right? There was food security, there's healthy living, there's their economic development. And so all of that for us was a good investment in this community that we were already investing in other ways. It's a high priority zone because the chronic disease is overwhelms this community. It's very impoverished. It is a community that has been made many promises and has had several broken promises. And so for Keith to say this is going to be an anchor and is going to drive economic development for a community that is not forgotten but is overlooked often, it was just the right investment to make. It brings hope to the community. It shows the residents and others that we believe in this community and that we want to create a healthier environment for them. So it was an easy sell. We came in later, but primarily it was just the right investment in the right area with the right people.
Well, I applaud the role you're playing in being a champion and being able to, convince the rest of the healthcare system that this was a good investment for the community. So thank you. Thank you, Yvonne. Courtney, let's move on to you. We would just love to hear a little bit more interested in why Calviva Health was interested as a health payer getting involved in this project, and then also Calviva's role throughout the project. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, thank you. This is an exciting project. I think we connected pre-COVID 2018, 2019. And I believe our connection was actually what Artie was referring to. He sent me an email. He said, Courtney, I need you to come here and meet with these folks. They're doing some incredible things. And as he referred, that is how a lot of our partnerships start. I get emails from Yvonne and Keith all the time. And it's exciting because when I get them from these types of partners, I know that eventually there's going to be some investment from Calviva because I know that they're not going to just introduce us to anyone. And so Calviva is the largest local Medi-Cal plan. We're a managed care plan here in the Central Valley, and we're in Fresno, Madera, and Kings County. And so with that comes a lot of responsibility. We have 430,000 members in those 3 counties. Yeah, I was looking at my talking points from when we did a press conference for this project a few years ago, and my talking points was 326,000 members. But
Wow.
we have grown, and with that comes a lot of responsibility. We look at our data often and decide where we need to fund. And so a lot of people get confused because we are health insurance. And they're confused on, well, why are you providing grants and sponsorships? And so we've been around 12, 13 years now, and our philosophy has always been is when our members are healthier, we get a savings and we put that money right back into the community. And we know that good health doesn't just happen in a doctor's office. It happens with partnerships like this. And so when we came along, we wanted to make sure that this 93706 zip code was lifted up. So when we looked at our data, we knew that this had over 35,000 members for us. We knew that it was densely populated. We toured the area and realized there was really no green spaces for our community and kids to play and safe neighborhoods outside. So with this investment, we knew that we were going to create opportunities for families. And that was really our goal. And we knew that, whether it was health or safety, we knew that this project was going to start that pebble rolling down the hill. And we were hoping that it would turn into a boulder. And I feel like that's what it's been doing. I mean, we look at the news, and Pastor Kreiner from St. Rest has said, when our community is doing well is when we get a Starbucks. And, that was just announced that a Starbucks is coming to 93706. So I feel like this project has allowed that boulder to be created. And Calviva is just so proud to be a part of it. I have to give, kudos to Keith because he has been the driving force behind this. And part of, investing in communities is being updated all the time and knowing where the project is and knowing that it's getting completed, because there's times where we may invest and it could be years and years. Keith is constantly updating us. So it allows us to know that our investment in the community is being used wisely. So we're just really proud to be a part of the project.
Yeah, well, I also just applaud the role that you were playing in being the champion within your organization. And also it sounds like one of the lessons learned too is just kind of open communication. It seems like it's a big one from what you were saying. So but I'd like to start with you, Courtney, and just could you share one brief lesson that you've learned about partnering across sectors? And then I'll go to Yvonne, Artie, and Keith. Yeah.
I'm sorry, partnering with
Across sectors. So the fact that you're a
absolutely.
health payer partnering with government, community development, healthcare system, just any lesson you've learned from that experience.
Well, one thing that we've always said is the partnership moves at the speed of trust, right? And there's times where we've never partnered with someone and we come in and we do a small investment and we learn about them and we get to know the partnership. But this partnership, the trust was already there. And so allowing us to get introduced with St. Rest, that was a new partnership for us. And having, you know, businesses get involved in healthcare and the hospitals and government and our legislators, it's been really, really exciting that, you know, sometimes in projects, we're the only dollars in. And that's not where we want to be. We want to be with all of our partners. We want our competitors in. We like to play nice in the sandbox because we know that when we invest together, our investment's going to go farther. For us, this investment that started years ago has really opened our eyes to the zip code, and we've done, you know, a lot more investment since then, partnering with the high schools and local rec programs. So it's really been exciting to work with the different partners.
That's great to see that Food to Share project has kind of been a seed for more
Absolutely.
investment in the zip code. Yvonne, let's go to you. What's a lesson that you would share about partnering across sectors?
A couple of lessons learned. The strength of the partnership has a lot to do with the community impact that we're able to make. And so having brought in so many different partners into this particular project, I think could have proved to be a little bit difficult because, to Courtney's point, it does have a lot to do with trust. And having Keith lead the project was easy for us to say, yes, we're going to invest because we trusted him. He is a man of his word. The agencies that he brought in, he was very intentional in bringing in the partners that he did because he trusted them. And the impact that this particular project is going to make on the community is huge. And it wouldn't have been possible without all of those partnerships because, to his point earlier, the project costs kept growing and it kept taking more time. And we could have said, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, because it just took longer than what we thought. And the money is going into a money pit, right? That was never the conversation, because we knew that there was a vision behind this partnership. And regardless of the cost, it was the right thing to do. It was the right partners. It was the right partner mix. And every time new funding came in, it was exciting to see that somebody else believed in the project. And so there are never enough partners to make the best community impact.
That's great to hear, just that you just want to keep on growing those partnerships, that it really helps to support the project and the community. Yeah. Artie, let's go to you. What's one lesson you've learned about partnering with healthcare, health payers across different sectors?
Well, and this really applies to all partnerships that I've seen, is one, community voice, resident community voice needs to be embedded in the partnership, right? That actually should be one of the leading voices. And then the two is, in a partnership, you really have to pay attention to some people would use the term the weakest link, but who needs the most capacity building so that's strong, the coalition, the partnership is stronger. And that's the reality. Even in this partnership, is there's some capacity building that has had to happen and will need to continue to happen, right, for some of the programmatic work. So I would say those two: community voice and ongoing capacity building of partners.
It's two really important points when you're thinking about partnership development. Keith, let's go to you now.
I have to say that, we've got an overpolarized society, right? It's just pulling apart at the seams. And yet this theme of food security and healthy food systems and the church and the community and healthcare health plans and government grants. I think it just all kind of came together. We have a span ideologically from very progressives that were giving money to this to very, very conservative people because they saw that it was a practical, needed project. And we didn't get too fancy. You know, we just basically kept plowing the same ground. You know, it is a food desert. There are chronic disease related to lack of good, healthy food, you know, on and on and on. And it's just a very solid project, right? And so I feel like part of this is just having a very good story that's practical and you can actually get it done. And people, I think we have 31 donors in this capital stack. And this now is a $6.3 million, probably worth more than that now, $6.3 million debt-free asset for this church and this community to use and leverage for a whole bunch of other stuff. And I think that's the main thing is that this is an area where a few key high value investments like the St. Rest Food to Share Hub can make a big difference for a lot of other people going, I got confidence now, I can go invest here.
Yeah.
So it's just simplicity, clear story, persistence, great partners like the people on this screen. I mean, you know, it's just a layup, right? It just is hard. We were in the trenches a lot, really worried about making the last $500,000. It seemed like the last $500,000 was harder than the first $6 million. But you just stay after it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it also goes to show that having, you know, a healthcare system and a health payer involved initially in that investment helps to, you know, magnify and diversify the funding base because both of those institutions, as you all know, are so key to the community. So
I can't tell you, I just want to interject. I can't tell you how many times I've invoked the name Calviva and invoked the name St. Agnes Trinity Health Systems to get people to see the credibility of the people who have already invested. And so that's the game. These are credible people, credible institutions, and they're in, right?
yeah, anchor institutions really in the community. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you all for sharing part of your story. Thank you so much for your time and excited about the launch of the Food Rest project coming up just in May. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.